What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Mongols, brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network. I'm Mike. With me is Kevin, Josh. We have so much to talk about today, but first, yes, we did have a victory. Yeah, didn't want to spend too much time. Like I said, we have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. Didn't want to make Josh wait, so Josh, you get to crack that one open early. Guys, I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. I feel like it's 2 weeks, maybe. I did the interview with the new president, but beyond that, I haven't been around. I will say that I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to you guys because I felt like there were times, like I was driving around and listening to you, that you would say something and it would like jar something in my mind as like, oh, that's a topic like we should bring up at some other point. Whereas when we're here in the thick of it, I'm just like, moving on. Let's go. Like that's great. Shut up, Kev. We got other stuff we got to talk about. We're out of time. Let's go.
Did you ever feel like you were supposed to like respond or like chirp in like with your like I can imagine driving and like listening being like, well actually wait, I'm not on the podcast.
There are times where like, you know, one of you might say something and I feel like I have a rebuttal just like queued up ready to go, and it's just like and then like I'm waiting for the other one of you to say the rebuttal and then you don't, and I'm like totally missed out on that. So yeah. But I will say,
welcome back, Mike.
I know, right? But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought you guys crushed it. I think it was Liz or somebody had said that we should start this thing where we just start putting together different pairings of people that we don't normally have, and that could be a lot of fun. So like do an episode that's just like Josh and Laura Ellen, or like Liz and Justin, or you know, me and Steve, or whatever it may be, and just sort of see how the dynamics play and shift and all of that. We did put out a poll, Kev, you'd be happy to know. We said, should Kev host all the shows from now on? And 45% of people said, without question.
Love the options. Yeah.
36% said absolutely, and only 18% said yes. So nobody said no, shockingly. I don't know, you know, you're that big of a hit. So kudos to you, man. What was it like? I didn't realize it had literally been 5 years and you hadn't done it.
Yeah, no. I mean, Riley saw that poll on Twitter and she was like, she read it first and she was like, do you want me to vote no? And then she's like, oh, wait, no, there's like no option for no. No, I mean, it was fine. Yeah, no, like, you know, I don't want to do it again. That's for sure. Like not for multiple years, but yeah, no, it was fine.
Somebody on Twitter replied, like, did Kevin put out this poll? And I was like, no.
The exact opposite.
Yeah.
They would all have said no.
Yeah. It is Labor Day. So for those of you watching live, happy Labor Day. For those of you a day later, hopefully you enjoyed the long weekend. Did you guys do anything fun with the long weekend? Josh, anything going on?
We did a lot of house stuff like yesterday and today, kind of like getting some projects done. Forever, like a year ago, Danny Earls, we commissioned him to do some photos for us, and we finally got them hung in the hallway going up the stairs. Liz did a great job like framing them up. She used to work at Michael's as a framer back in like college days or high school days, and so like she has all the supplies now and did a really cool job putting mats on them, making them look cool. So yeah, we did that and got some other stuff done around the house. But yeah, pretty much just hung out around the house and did some projects.
Kev, how about you?
Same. It's been a rainy while in Knoxville. It's been a rainy weekend, and it's been rainy before that. It's going to be rainy after that. So there's limited stuff we can do, but yeah, last weekend we went to Asheville and saw Thundercat in concert, which was awesome. Had a good time in Asheville, but again, this weekend was kind of chilled. So it was a good weekend. I mean, you know, it's all, when people say that, it's like once you hit a certain age, a weekend of nothing is wonderful for some people at least, and that's what it is like for me. But yeah, it's good. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the boys started back to school on Monday, so basically school all week, and then Ollie had varsity games on Monday and Tuesday. So like come Wednesday morning, we were just like dead. But then we had an open house Wednesday, Thursday. There was something else going on, so we really just tried to take it. We watched Beetlejuice this weekend for some reason I got the itch to watch. It feels a little early, but like I never really know how early is too early to start doing like Halloween-y type fall stuff. But I didn't regret it. So, that's
Like when you say you watched, like, did the boys watch it with you?
Mhm.
Okay, was that their first time seeing Beetlejuice?
No. They had
Okay.
seen it maybe last year. We sat down and watched it. They sort of like came and went as the movie was on. I definitely was enjoying it more than they were, but at least at this point, I'm sure we'll get closer to Halloween and they'll want to watch all of the movies and all of the shows and do all of the things. But I think I'm just ahead of the curve in our family in terms of getting ready for fall.
It feels fallish now. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the constant overcast days, and there's been some leaves changing. So I get what you mean.
Yeah. So, lots and lots of stuff to talk about here, guys. Real quick. So, a number of exciting things that we wanted to point out before we actually dive into the game. So, first and foremost, for those of you who follow us on Twitter, or those of you who subscribe to us on YouTube, which I was like shocked that that's a thing because we do these live and the videos go up on YouTube after the fact. But I was surprised to see we have like 60 plus subscribers on YouTube. I'm like, okay, cool. But if you follow us on YouTube, if you follow us on Twitter, Justin has started putting out game day videos, and they're basically like 3 minutes or less. And what we're doing is we're releasing them on the morning of game day. And the idea is just to give you sort of a bite-sized sample of what you could expect and what to look out for in the upcoming game. And so when you wake up first thing in the morning, to get hit with that, it's sort of a nice little primer, get you jump started for the game, get you ready for the day. And they've been really, really entertaining, really well received. The first one on Twitter had something like 400 views by the end of it. So like it's making the rounds and people are watching it. So really, really cool stuff. So make sure that you follow us on Twitter. Make sure that you follow us on YouTube so you get those videos. You can check them out. I don't expect you to come watch us in talking this after the fact. Like go listen on the podcast. But Justin's videos are there. He has like highlight videos where he breaks down plays and he puts up charts like breaking down stats and numbers and stuff of different players. So it's definitely worth watching, and that's why we haven't just sort of added it to the podcast stream. So make sure you go check those out. That's the first thing. Second big thing. For those of you over the past 5 years, essentially, that have supported us on Patreon, Patreon is no more. Not like literally, but we have decided to pull the plug on the Mongols Patreon page for a couple of reasons. I think one, the primary reason for me, primary reason from my yeah, I see you, Josh, trying to do it out too. From my standpoint is that so my day job is I work in user experience, and the idea that we could put content out there, but in order for you to go get it, you actually have to like have a Patreon app or go to Patreon to access it is a pain. Like the extra stuff that we give you, I feel like should just be available wherever you are. So I have an issue also with like doing special episodes that you then have to go somewhere else to listen to outside of your podcast player. So I don't want to do that either. So we're saying we're done with Patreon. We thoroughly are grateful for everybody that has sponsored us on Patreon over the years. All of the donations that people have given us has gone towards all sorts of different giveaways that we've done, donations that we've given to different charities. It's helped to like help us not have to pay out of pocket for things like microphones or stuff like that. So it kind of helped us keep us going. So we really appreciate it, but the Patreon page is no more. In place of that, so sort of the transition is some of you may have seen that there's this new thing that Twitter released called Twitter Circles. And I've sort of had my eye on this for a little while. I knew it was sort of in the testing phase, and I've been playing with it with my personal account. It's now out for everybody. The way that Twitter Circles works is that within Twitter, you can be added to somebody's circle, and then anytime those people tweet just to that circle sees whatever it is that they're sharing. So we, as Mongols, have our own Twitter circle. And the way that it works is that if we want to put out content that just it can be seen by people in our circle, we can do that. So right now, our circle basically consists of everybody you would expect from Mongols. Kevin, Liz, and Laurel, and Justin, Steve. Anytime I tweet just to that circle, they're the only ones that can see it. And they can reply, and other people in that circle can see the replies, but it's just that circle. It's a very exclusive club in a lot of ways. So combining the two things together, my issues with Patreon and this whole idea of Twitter circles, we are now basically extending our Mongols Twitter circle to really whoever it is that would like to be part of it. And so the idea is that if you join our Twitter circle, we will give you exclusive content that basically won't be available anywhere else on Twitter. We won't be sharing it with the general public. It will just go to these circles. And so what does that mean? These are things like the daily Twitter polls that we've been doing. Basically every single morning we're putting out a different Twitter poll. A number of the polls end up making their way into the show. Some of the polls end up getting in front of Riverhounds management, like you may have seen when the president was on and we talked about roof over the stands and all of those things. So the Twitter polls, first of all, they're meant to be a little bit fun, but they also help to sort of shape the future of Mongols and, potentially help influence things with the team. We do live game reactions and conversations during the games. So we put out a poll a little while ago and a bunch of people said that you're really active on Twitter on away games. If you were part of that Twitter circle, we could have our own little conversations about the games, share how we're actually feeling about them. We could do a thing, Josh, you were really interested in doing like Twitter spaces. So Twitter spaces are essentially where we could just sort of open up a channel and say, hey, at halftime during the games, we're going to jump on and just share our thoughts during halftime. And anybody who wants to jump on can share their thoughts. We can tag people in. So if you're in the Twitter circle, we can sort of tag you in and you can share your thoughts and we just have a conversation around it. So we can do a lot of fun stuff as it relates to that. You'd get early access to game day previews. So I just talked about Justin's previews. Figure put those out first thing in the morning just to our Twitter circle and then maybe later in the day to everybody else. So a lot of cool stuff. And the idea is that it's right within Twitter, right where most of our supporters are anyway. So if you are interested, you can head over to twitter.com/Mongols, basically our profile page, and you can sign up. And the way that we're doing this is because we are taking away the Patreon thing. The idea is for $1 a month, you can be part of our Twitter circle. So you'll see a link. The tweet actually should be up right now on our page that has the instructions for how to do it. You basically just click the link. It's a $1 subscription through PayPal, and you could go that route. And basically, once we get your email address, we'll email you. You let us know what Twitter handle you want to be part of the circle, and we will add you in like cool when you're in. The other thing you can do is you may have noticed that I am rocking a new Mongols hat. And so you can either go the $1 a month route, or if you'd like your own hat, which I know a number of people have been asking for as well, you can pay $30. We'll send you the hat and you'll be included in the Twitter circle for an entire year. So not just the end of this year, but also all of 2023 as well. So really we're sort of gearing up for next season in a lot of the ways, the same, the team is as well, but you just sort of get the rest of 2022 as a bonus. So head over to our Twitter profile page, twitter.com/Mongols. You will see the tweet that has the instructions. You can click on the link for either $1 a month if you want to do it, or if you want the hat, you can just order the hat. $30 a month will automatically add you. So check it out. We think it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, let us know what you think. So that is all of that. I guess, guys, anything, I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you. Is there anything there that you were like, shut up, Mike, because I wanted to say something?
No, well, first off, the hat looks awesome. If obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see the hat. Mike's wearing it right now, but if you go over to Twitter, you can see it. It's an image on the post he's talking about, but it's using our logo that's not the Cerberus, but the sea monster, like the Monongahela monster, I think is what we called it.
Yeah.
The three-headed Monongahela monster. So that's a pretty cool hat. And also a little bit more about spaces. So it's like something I don't think you mentioned is it's actually like an audio only feed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
So
right.
yeah, it opens up. It's almost like a podcast, but it's a live cast of just audio, and the host can at any time tag people in who are listening and make them co-hosts, and they can actually just start talking right from their phone. It's a pretty cool idea. It's kind of like just on the go podcast almost. That's like a live radio feed. So yeah, that will be a lot of fun. I can see us doing some cool stuff with that, especially if anyone can just pop in and maybe, I don't know if there's any way to record it though, because it'd be kind of cool if we could get some people to like talk on it and then maybe show it on the podcast, the following podcast about questions or anything like that. But we'll look into it, see what's going on.
Yeah. There's a lot of new stuff that's going on at Twitter. I've listened to a few spaces, but I haven't actually ran any yet. So I'm really looking forward to. I think doing it at halftime could be a lot of fun. Just like, what's everybody thinking? Like, what's going on here? What changes do we think Lily should be making, or whatever? So could be interesting, but we're gonna play with it. The last bit of news, I know there's a lot of news before we dive into actual Hounds stuff. We're already 15 minutes in. Good Lord, I need to stop talking. But we got to say this. Congrats to Gene Klein, who is being inducted into the Riverhounds Hall of Fame this Saturday. There's going to be a ceremony at the home game against Louisville. Gene has been coach, GM, broadcaster. He's been on this show before. We did sort of a deep dive of his history with him. Just all around, just a core part of Pittsburgh professional soccer history. So, massive congratulations to him. Make sure, you're there for the ceremony this weekend as we take on Louisville. Really, really great stuff. Really excited for him. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping with Gene Klein, and like it's great to see that the Hall of Fame's coming back, because we hadn't heard anything from it for a while. Right now, the only way you can really tell who's on the Hall of Fame if you're in the stadium is up on the the box seats, essentially behind the goal on that side. On the glass, they have it etched in the glass, like every person who's in the Hall of Fame. I would love to see if they're gonna talk about renovating the stadium, that kind of stuff. If we could get a more prominent Hall of Fame feature, even if it was just like pictures along the fence or like against the brick wall, like under the grandstand, where they could do like laminate pictures or something like that in a little plaque and telling you like each person why they're there, why they're in the Hall of Fame, like something like that, just to show the history, show off the history the Hounds have. Because at this point, Hounds history it goes pretty deep, and we're one of the older clubs in USL, so we should probably flaunt that a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, gents. Now that sort of the housekeeping is out of the way, let's talk. We had 2 games this week. I'm kind of just lumping them both together, and we'll just do shared takeaways. So we drew 0-0 with the Battery, and we beat Loudon 2-1 yesterday. So we basically got 4 points out of a possible 6. The first takeaway I have, and I'm going to shut up because I want you guys to talk, but obviously, Josh, how are you going to box up the Old Guard shield and ship it? Have you figured that out yet?
I thought about.
Are you just going to forget?
I was
just let you forget?
I think someone from Battery has to contact me first before I consider
That's fair.
it.
Totally legit. You don't know where to send it?
Yeah, like I don't know. So if I don't hear anything, I guess I can't do anything about it. I don't have an address, so shucks. No, I mean obviously we're gonna reach out and see if how we want to do it. But I'm also like the regiment. That's the Battery's supporters group. They're not that active on like any social media. I looked at their Twitter the other day, and like literally the only tweets I see are either retweets of the club's Twitter account, or every once in a while you see a game day tweet where it's like, hey, tailgate starts at blah blah blah, and that's like the only social media interactivity they have. So hopefully they're still active, because I can't really tell from their Twitter account if they're still a thing. But yeah, it would suck if like we get radio silence for them, because then it's not fun when it's a one-sided thing. Like we had that with Harrisburg for the longest time. Their supporters group was super inactive. Every once in a while, like some years, it seemed like they were non-existent. So it's kind of bad to have like a rivalry or a cup with someone who's one-sided. So
it's all the more infuriating that we lost, or
right?
We lost the Old Guard shield. We didn't lose the game. Are there like written rules to the Old Guard shield? Like at a certain point, can you just be like, we're the last active supporter group out of it, so we're just keeping it?
There are some things around all that. It was interesting because there for a while it looked like, okay, if one of us were to go under, at that point there's more active clubs in USL League One than in Championship. So therefore the Old Guard shield would go down to League One and be with those clubs. But now it's like, it's hard to tell, because there's not really that many active Old Guard, original Old Guard clubs in USL League One either. So it is just kind of like, okay, well, last one standing, we'll see. So I think Richmond's on there, and they're in League One right now. I'm trying to think who else is in League One. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
To pour salt in the wound, just to sort of point out that the Battery have already been eliminated from playoffs, but they won more hardware than we did this year so far. So feels good, doesn't it? Kev, you've been awfully quiet over there. Give us a takeaway from these two games. What did you see? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's been being quiet for the first 20 minutes. I have taken my liberties to just shut up after hosting.
you just slipped right back into your role.
That's right. Feels good. No, I mean, so I missed most of the midweek game against Charleston and then caught the Loudoun game. I thought it was interesting how Josh and I were talking a little bit about expectations around starting lineups for this week and how, okay, it's a midweek game, but we have a lot of time on either end of that, and it's Charleston. Bob thought he wanted to or needed to. I mean, it's debatable. Do all of the changes that he made against Charleston because they were significant. At least more than 5 changes that I can think after glancing at the lineup. But yeah, I can't give too much color to the Charleston game because, like I said, I saw the highlights. But that being said, the Loudoun game, I thought we played really well. I thought we created a ton of chances. Sure, the pen at the end happens. Jamali Waite showed why he should be the starting keeper from here on out. And yeah, I thought we looked good. And I thought for me, I finally got a definitive answer of, I think the reason why the stat that everyone hates to talk about, XG, I think the reason why our XG is so low is because I'm assuming we never have shooting practice. I just think all of our players just don't know how to shoot. Create a lot of chances, and when we get in those chances, and then it's just it's just poor finishing. But yeah, I thought Cicerone looked great against Loudoun. Could have had a hat trick. Forbes played really well after having, I think, a pretty mediocre season. I say mediocre season. He's on 9 assists so far this season. So yeah, I think after being in this kind of weird place in my opinion, over the past couple of weeks with this Riverhounds team, I think the Loudoun game, they showed a lot of good quality, even though at the end of it 2-1 doesn't seem too convincing. I think if they can build on that against Louisville, which is a big if, I think we're going in the right direction.
I feel like in the 2 minutes that you talk, you just sabotaged all of my talking points because you just glanced over every little thing that I was going to discuss. I'll pick out one and I'll circle back to it. And then Josh, I want to get your takeaways. You mentioned, Kev, do we not have shooting practice? Against the Battery, we had 16 shots. Only 3 of them were on target. Against Loudoun, we had 18 shots. Only 6 were on target. So combined this week, we had 34 shots, but only 9 were on target. So only 26% of the shots we took were actually on frame and had a chance of going in. And that's just that's maddening. That's amateur league stuff. I would expect that from an old guys league. Oh, great. He's going to shoot, but there's only a 25% chance he's going to actually hit the net. These guys are paid, man. At a certain point, you have to be you gotta, even if it's right at the keeper, at least it's at the net.
Sometimes it is.
Which sometimes it is, yeah. So of those 9, a majority of them were right at the keeper because only 2 went in out of those 9. So that's the other number that's kind of mind-boggling. We took 34 shots and scored on 2 of them over these past 2 games, which is nuts.
Great 2 goals, though, I have to say. They were really, really good goals.
Yeah, it's one thing to see us shank the ball or what was it, Cicerone in the Charleston match where he just the whiff. Yeah, I think it was 18th minute or 19th minute. He just completely wound up and scuffed it. Like he just missed the ball completely and it went rolling past him. Ended up still being good because it was kind of like a dummy shot that ended up helping us a little bit to almost get a goal. But it's if it's shot on target, it's to the point where if it's shot on target, I'm more happy than anything. I'm just like, oh, the keeper, it was right to the keeper. He saved it. All right, whatever. At least it wasn't, skying the ball over the net or shanking it to the right or left or something like that. But yeah, it is so annoying. And I think I talked about this a little bit last podcast, but that's my issue with the XG chart is just that, like, I'm so used to seeing us have shots just not on target or great buildup, but just seems like in the final third we're terrible. We have no consistency at all, and I'm super worried about playoffs. I'm like not making the playoffs, just like competing in the playoffs. Or I'm really worried about this game coming up against Louisville. I don't feel confident. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
this isn't a great position to be in going into the Louisville game. I don't think so, because I feel like we need these points more than ever now. It's not like a situation before where it's like, we can, kind of put on our third string against Louisville as long as we get points in these games. Like we didn't get enough points in these games to do that, to make me feel comfortable about, just sitting our best players against Louisville to rest them up for, the last final stretch of this season. It's a situation where I feel like, no, like we need to get as many points as possible at this point if we want to host a playoff game, because we have to get to fourth place. And I'm not confident we can. Luckily, we're playing, not so much luckily, but we're playing against a bunch of West Coast teams. So I had no clue what to expect from those. But at least that's a lot of travel for the West Coast team coming into Highmark, since most of the games are at home. So we have that going for us.
Yeah, we'll get to the West Coast teams and stuff. I have a chart and some numbers to maybe try to paint a picture of what we can expect. Right. But we'll sort of get to that after we talk about these two games. Kev, your point about weight, you guys talked a little bit about it last week. I think Houndsy has been talking about it, about sort of the keeper rotation. I don't get it at this point in the season. Like, I get if you're trying to figure out who your best keeper is. If you don't know who your best keeper is with 6 games left, like, we've got a problem. So other positions, I can understand rotating to give guys minutes because they might be outfield players. You want to make sure they're fresh. Keepers, it just feels like a different story to me. It's like with weight back there, we seem to be slightly calmer in defense. It's organized. You have sort of a general, you could see him sort of giving orders and instructions in these past 2 games. And it's like, why, disrupt the apple cart at this point?
He's just a better shot stopper too. I mean, I think he made like a handful of good saves against Auden.
He's played 4 more games than Silva, but he basically averages 1 goal against per game. Silva averages 1.5 goals against per game. Waite has 6 clean sheets and Silva has 3. So at least if you just look statistically at the keepers, Waite has been performing better and producing better outcomes. He would have had a shutout in this game if it wasn't for the PK, and you can't really fault the keeper in a PK situation. If he saves it, you can fault him, but like the shooter is supposed to score in that scenario, and in this case it was Benteke Jr., so like you kind of felt like it was going to go in.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I was like, when did they get Christian Benteke? Like, that is ridiculous.
Yeah. If you I'm trying to think of like, what's the game where you just combine weird words together to see what happens? Like Jamali Waite's
Mad
thinking
Libs.
like I'm saving, or I'm facing a penalty shot against a Benteke in Loudon. Like you just would never put those 3 things together. So yeah. Other thoughts from this one? What do you got? Or these 2? What do you guys got?
I mean, the goals in the second and the Loudon game were awesome. Both really of them were fantastic goals. Team, putting together string of passes and just being on the same page. Cicerone, shout out to him for that first goal. I felt like it was a great goal, and I don't know, we get these flashes with this team where I'm convinced this is one of the better teams we've had, ever. and for the Riverhounds, it's just the consistency is not there, and I'm just hoping that we get it together in these last stretch of games and can have a great playoff run.
I tweeted out, and the tweet has gotten a lot of traction. A lot of people seem to like it and agree. I think what's interesting about Cicerone is the way that the camera was set up during that play, and you sort of see it develop over the past few years. And I don't know why it is. We'll have these scenarios where you have players that go in one-on-one with the keeper, essentially. And when that happens, my confidence level that we're going to score is probably like 40 to 50%. Especially, we just talked about like the shot stats where it's like only 26% of the time it hits the net anyway. Cicerone was that weird, he's that weird anomaly where when I saw him get that ball in space one-on-one with the keeper, it was like 90% that's going in. Like I just had this confidence level that like it's him, it's going in. And even later in the game, a similar situation happened with Dikwa, and it was saved. And it was just kind of like, there's something, it's crazy because Josh, you mentioned the whiff against the Battery, but there's something about Cicerone that even like a Nico Brett, like I don't feel like I had that confidence level, like who's meant to be like a pure finisher, that he's going to pick a spot and put it away in the same way that that I've had that confidence with Cicerone. Do you guys agree with that? Am I like over exaggerating that?
I mean, a little bit. I would say I think Cicerone had another chance where Forbes made this beautiful pass on the edge of the 18 and put like Cicerone through again, and Cicerone went to hit it first time and just put it like 5-6 feet wide. And so, yes, I mean, through one-on-one with the keeper, Cicerone is probably the person I back the most on our team. But internally, I'm still like flipping a coin whether or not he actually puts it away.
And I feel like Dikwa has, I mean, he's had a great season overall.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like I almost would. Actually, I think I might be, if given the choice between the two of them, like, hey, only one can start. I might still go with Dikwa right now because I feel like he's on more than Cicerone is. Now, I don't think statistically that actually bears out, and I do think Cicerone is a great player, and both of them, like, because even that goal that we're talking about, Dikwa was the one who had the assist on that one, I believe, and it was a great assist the way he was able to thread that ball through. Yeah, it's just we have good players; they just need to be consistent, and I feel like both of those two have issues being consistent.
Yeah, I'm in no way knocking Dikwa. I think Dikwa, we've especially seen down the stretch here, he's probably one of the hardest working players that we have on the team. And he just gets himself into positions to sort of throw his body at the ball and make magic happen. That might be an interesting poll. Like one-on-one with the keeper, you can only pick one player to take it. Who's taking it? And like see what people think. Yeah, I like it. What else?
I'll say the Kizza goal too. Shane Wheat's ball into it was great. I mean, when in the build-up play for it was really good too. I mean, it was just, I think the Hounds were doing a good job keeping the pressure on Loudon in their third, keeping the ball, cycling it, probing, trying to find space. And I forget who laid it off to Shane Wheat, but Wheat was in a bunch of space and was kind of put through in the 18 and hit it first time and hit it hard and hit it like kind of chest level. And Kizza, being the striker that you would want him to be, makes the near post run and it just finds his head and he fires it in. I remember like seeing it happen. I was like, I don't know. It sounds weird, but like I wasn't ready for that to go in, and then it went in. I was like, holy crap, it was, so yeah, no, it was that. Both goals in this game were great. After 90 minutes of, I think, probing and trying to create chances and ultimately ending in somewhat frustration. I mean, you're not going to score on every sustained possession in your opponent's third, right? So I don't want to create this kind of false narrative that like anytime we have the ball in their third and we don't score, it's a terrible thing. But in a game where we created so much, we end up with 2 wonderful goals. And that goal in particular, I think, was even in some ways better than the Cicerone goal. The Cicerone goal is very fluid, but the Wheat goal, or not the Kizza goal that Wheat set up, it was just it was a perfectly worked kind of like pattern of play goal.
It was so well passed as well from Wheat that I was confused when I saw the goal live because Kissa doesn't stop. Like it doesn't look like he moves to the ball. He just keeps on running straight ahead, and like it hits his head, and he keeps on running. It was so smooth that I was confused. I thought maybe the ball bent in. I'm like, what did Wheat bend that in? Because like it didn't look like Kissa even went for the ball. It just like hit his head. It was in. Like it was just perfectly aimed. So yeah, the whole sequence there was just awesome.
I mean, go ahead, Mike. Pull up. So you could. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I'm very curious now. I want to look at. I don't have the. It's gonna take me a second to pull it up, but I'm very curious now what like Shane Wheat's stats are for the season now.
Well, as you look that up, I'll give another plug to Justin's videos, because in the one that he released Sunday morning, he actually took a moment and put up a chart comparing Shane Wheat and Ordonez to like some of the best defenders that we sort of recognize as the best defenders for the Hounds over the years. Toby Adewale was still like top of that list, which I was like, really? But in terms of like blockages, clearances, I'm trying to think of like disrupted passes, things like that. Ordonez and Wheat are Justin's going to yell at me because I know I'm going to get this wrong, but it was like top 7 or 8 in like Hounds history. And at that point they still had 7 games to play. So like they could still catch up to, like, there was a Joe Greenspan year that was like right in the mix there. And there was a Hugh Roberts tally that was right in the mix there too, that they could leapfrog and really end up with potentially some of the best defensive years statistically that we've seen in recent memory for the Hounds. So I know early on we were sort of dogging Wheat, but I think when you compare sort of what he's done, I think as a pure center back, we had a lot of concern, but for whatever reason, with him out wide a little bit and streaking up the field, he's sort of a dual threat in ways that I was not really expecting at the beginning of the season. So, yeah. Kev, did you find it? You look like you're like deeply. Yeah,
No, I'm really bad at finding the stuff. It's still going to take me a little bit.
He's stuck watching cat videos, so we'll just have to let that one go.
Yeah, I mean, with we keep on joking in the Steel Army that like he is going to get more goals. Like we always expect him to get a goal because of the history this season, to the point where it's like, you know, our best forward is Shane Wheat. Like, obviously, it's not true. Not even close to being true, but it sounds fun. Yeah, he's had a great year. I do think last year, I'm trying to look it up as well, but I'm pretty sure last year he had more. I think it was assists. No, I can't. I have to look it up. 1 second.
Yeah, your wife just said it's like Bob knows what he's doing, which. Yeah, you know, credit where credit's due. Bob usually gets it right for sure. One downside, well, you guys sort of look up those stats, and whether we circle back to this, I don't know. But word got out that Dos Santos had a knee issue and potentially had surgery this week, and so I'm assuming that means that he's pretty much done for the season. So we saw Rivera in against Loudoun.
Revere played really well too.
Yeah, I mean, a few games back, I was a little bit worried because Rovi seemed to be off just a hair, and it was a bit mind baffling because he went from, in my mind, being a must start to like needs more minutes. But I thought, you know, in these last, at least this last game, he looked pretty spot on. So it's a shame because I thought Dos Santos was having a really good rookie year. So to see it end that way is disappointing, and we don't know the extent of the knee injury and sort of how surgery went. So hopefully, you know, all went well. But Polanski just shared, Bob's a soccer genius. Let me show you my shocked face. So yes, we know, you know, question Bob Lilly at your own peril. So
Argudo made an appearance this game. That's the first time we've seen him in forever. Like he
in a
hasn't
while.
been making the bench, or I think it was Shu because he has his handy dandy spreadsheet with all the stats. He said that it was his first appearance since June 25th was the last time we saw Argudo. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then he
Once
promptly
again-
got a yellow card, by the way.
I was gonna say, once again, your wife taking us to task. She said, "You guys are so doom and gloom about the game, and then list half the players and talk about what a good game they had." That's what we do, Liz.
I feel like that was especially my feeling when I was watching the Loudon game, and I'm like kind of like buzzing. I'm like, we're ahead, we're doing okay, we're doing like we're getting the job done. And then every tweet from you, Mike, that night was like, "Bah, humbug." I was like, "Oh, all right, I guess I get it." Like,
so here's my concern, and this is sort of segueing into later stuff, but I'll just sort of touch on it now. So I named this episode "Withdrawing from the Bank," and I was like, how do I phrase this in as few words as possible? My concern is that, okay, we beat Loudon 2-1. Loudon is on the verge of being eliminated from playoff contention with 6 games left. So like, we're supposed to beat Loudon. We were supposed to beat the Battery. We were supposed to beat Atlanta. We like all of these games we should have dominated. And there's some numbers here that I'll share, but it feels very much like we're in the position that we're in partially because we banked up so many points earlier in the season. And so we're sort of lucky that these games haven't derailed us and dropped us more down the standings. And that's my concern, is that these games are against teams that we should be crushing. And now you have Louisville coming to town, and we're going to have Birmingham midweek in a game that could likely determine whether or not we get a home playoff game, because they're going to be battling with us for that. And can we put together performances against these other teams that are actually going to make the playoffs this year, as opposed to these other teams? And so that's why I think I was a little bit more down. There were moments in this game that I felt like we were pretty pedestrian. One that I was like kind of upset about. And it could have just been like flashbacks of other things. But there was a moment in the game with Kizza. I agree, his goal was totally legit. I love what he brings to the team. But there was a ball that came in, and he did this like no look shot. He like wrapped his foot around the right and just like tried to dink it into the upper corner without looking at it. And then when it didn't go in, just sort of walked away like, eh. And I'm like, I tell my kid, I'm like, you will get 2 to 3 shots on goal per game. That's it. That's all you get. So like, you got to make them count. And it felt very reminiscent to, I don't know if you guys remember, Mario Balotelli was, I think it was in Pittsburgh, but then he also did it in the MLS All-Star game, where like he's walking in on the keeper and he tried doing this like little dance, like drag to like showboat.
It was
and
not
totally
that
missed
bad.
it.
That comparing it to Balotelli
No. But it wasn't that bad. But in that moment, you could tell Balotelli was like, whatever. Like, I don't really care. If it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I was just doing this thing. And that's almost what this felt like to me, was that like Kizza was like, I don't know if it's really going to go in. If it goes in, it's going to be a wonder goal. But like, if you really didn't have a shot, hold up the ball, get other players in, like take a good shot. Don't just waste it. Don't be one of the 75% that don't hit the net. And so
don't
that
be
was part of my
Chicharito.
grumpiness.
Yeah, don't be Chicharito this weekend against I think it was Sporting KC. LA Galaxy was playing Sporting KC. He had a penalty kick and literally just kind of like lobs it at the keeper. The keeper just like catches it and just like looks up like, all right. Great PK. Yeah. End up being a draw instead of the LA Galaxy winning that game.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I think there's a fine line between being, I don't like the phrase, but I'm going to use it because I think more people know what I mean when I say it. But like being in that sports flow state and just kind of feeling it and trying to, like, when you're having fun on the field, you play better, you play with more confidence, you play more relaxed, and in certain moments You love when a player, does a small trick and a flair that doesn't need to do it, but it brings joy to the game and it shows they're in confidence and they're having fun. There's a fine line between that and irresponsible cockiness. I didn't read that as like irresponsible cockiness. I read that more as Kizza got his goal. He was feeling it. We were 2-0 up, playing really well. For 20 minutes up until that chance, I feel like Loudon didn't really have anything to say for it. So I don't know. I'm playing devil's advocate. I totally get your point, Mike. I mean, you want to be ruthless. I mean, when obviously it's like we shouldn't be comparing leagues at all, but like when Erling Haaland is scoring like a goal and a half a day, like not even a game, like a day, like then yeah, like when you're that ruthless, then there's a certain ruthlessness that's really nice. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a fine line.
Yeah. Anything else about these two games, guys? I know we're really getting into the wee moments here. We've already talked for 45 minutes, and I want to talk about Louisville and talk a little bit about stats and stuff. We good to move on here? Cool.
I mean, just reminding everyone, state of the situation here. We drew against, I just forgot, Red Bulls. Yeah, there we go. Red Bulls 2. We draw against Charleston. And what was the other game? In the Loudon game. I mean, that's the 3 games that we were talking about, bottom feeders, that we should win all 3 of those. I think before all this happened, we were talking that like, oh yeah, we should get like no reason why we can't get 9 points out of all 3 of these games. I think the only person who was maybe a little bit more pessimistic was Kevin, saying like, expecting a team to win all 3 is pretty, lofty. Kevin, take your thoughts on this. Is this even worse than what you were expecting?
It's hard to say without seeing how the Charleston game played out. Statistically, yes, it's worse than I was expecting.
We didn't lose a game.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you know what? I forget how many. Did we let up 2 against Red Bulls? I think it was 2-2. I think maybe I'm wrong.
It was 2-2.
I mean, yeah. So 3 goals. We let up 3 goals in 3 games. That's not great. So
well,
no, it's not.
Here,
as,
hold on.
It's not.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm forgetting Saturday. I'm sorry. I forgot Atlanta United too. That was in that mix too, and that was a win. So that's a plus.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was anticipating more out of the Charleston game and the Red Bulls game too, especially because the Red Bulls were the catalyst for us to break that 6-game losing streak or 6-game winless streak back in the middle part of the season. But no, it's not as good. It should be better for a team that has aspirations to go deep in the playoffs. Yeah, I don't even want to say it out loud, but like that kind of brings up like, is this a team that's going to go deep in the playoffs? I don't know.
Let me give you some stats here, okay? Because I was I was in the same boat, and I was trying to quantify how I was feeling, and I thought this sort of did it. So in July, we had 5 wins and a draw, so we got 16 points in July, and we were +9. Okay. Only two of those games were against current playoff teams, Miami and New Mexico. So in July, we got 16 points. In August, we had 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. So only 8 points, and we were at a +1. So we went from a +9 in July to a +1 in August, and only one of the teams we played is currently in the playoffs, and that's Memphis, and we lost to them. So we got half as many points in August as we did in July, and 3 of the teams that we played in August have already been eliminated from the playoffs. So to me, that's where this whole like cashing in on banked points things comes into play, in that to get half as many points a month later, and 3 of the games we played were against teams that are out of the playoffs, we should have picked up more points this month in August than we couldn't have done it statistically than July, but it should have been on par. And instead it feels like we're trending downward when you consider the number of points that we got, the number of goals that we've given up, and the competition that we've been playing. And so that's where I'm worried. Next week is going to be very telling. Louisville and Birmingham. Like that's going to tell us everything we need to know from the East. And so if we take a quick glance here at the standings, we are currently in 4th. So we did jump from 4th up to 5th. We are tied on points with Birmingham, who are right beneath us in 5th. So that's where this game is going to be huge, because it's literally a 6-point swing. If we're able to beat them, we go up 3, and that's 3 points they can't get. And Memphis is still somewhat in striking distance. They are on 52 points, but they do have a game in hand. So we need them to stumble a little bit, but there is potential that we could catch them. But again, we're playing Birmingham right beneath us, Louisville, who have already locked up a spot in the playoffs. And then we get into the other teams that we're going to be playing. So you guys mentioned a little bit, do we know what's going to happen against these Western Conference teams? So just to sort of paint a picture, here is our schedule for the rest of the season. We have Louisville on Saturday, Birmingham the following Wednesday, and then just Saturday games, weekend games for the rest of the year. We play Orange County, San Antonio, Sacramento, and Oakland. So if you're questioning, hey, what, are these teams any good? What should we be considering? Here's a look at the Western standings, and I highlighted the teams that we have to play. San Antonio has already locked up a playoff spot, and they are number 1 in the West. Sacramento is number 4 in the West. Oakland is in 9th and is likely going to be battling for a playoff spot all the way up until the last game. So that last game of the season for us is likely going to be against a team that is trying to get into a playoff spot. So that is not going to be any sort of gimme. And then Orange County somehow went from being the number 1 team in the league to last place in the West. And we get to face them after the Birmingham game, I believe. So when you're trying to get a sense of, we'll play them on September 24th. So when you're trying to get a sense of what's this Western run going to look like, it's looking like probably 3 really tough games and maybe 1 that's not going to be as tough. And unfortunately, the one that shouldn't be as tough is Orange County's, which we should get right after Birmingham, 10 days after Birmingham. So I guess the big question is, based on all that, how are we feeling? Kev, how are you feeling with all of that in mind?
A little better. I mean, I weirdly like a pretty even distribution of teams from the West. I mean, okay, maybe not the first place team. That'd be nice. But the fact that also, so we get, three of those at home. The one that's away is the 4th place team, which whatever, okay, not ideal, but a good challenge away from home that is possible. The thing, to back up just a second, I mean, looking at, I was surprised to see Louisville has lost they've lost 2 out of their last 3 games. Now, for as doom and gloom as we've been, look, we've all followed sport for a long time. We know stuff can happen, right? So let's say, if we beat Louisville on the weekend, which is possible, I would say unlikely, but which is possible. Louisville just tend to have our number, and that Louisville are just a better team than us over this course of the season from how everything's played out. But if we beat them at home, and if Louisville lose their game in hand, we're 4 points away from Louisville. That's ridiculous to say, to think of. Where if we just beat Louisville, and if Louisville lose their game in hand, we're 4 points away from first. As much as we've been kind of crapping on how bad we've been against these bottom feeder teams and et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'm surprised at how tight the top of the table now has kind of become over the last 3 or 4 weeks, with both Louisville and Tampa dropping some unexpected points. So, we'll see. It's, and I think, it's, Mike, you put out a good context of all the Western Conference games. And I think it's important to understand the context and think through them and talk about them. But it's just, for me, it's so hard to look to those games when I think Louisville and Birmingham sitting right in front of us have huge implications. And yeah, it's just really hard for me to kind of talk through the Western Conference games without thinking about the Louisville game and the Birmingham game, because I think our season kind of gets painted from that, and then whether or not we can gain momentum or not against the West Coast teams is kind of where that kind of, I don't know, the importance kind of sits in my mind.
I think the Birmingham Louisville thing, in my mind, paints a picture for what I will expect from our playoffs. Because I feel like once we get that, will give us a sense of what we're actually going to face in 6 weeks. Because I don't think anybody here is questioning whether or not we're going to make a playoff. We're going to make the playoffs. I think it's sort of jockeying for position. And if Louisville's already sort of locked up a spot, that's going to be the top competition from the East. Once you get to the championship, all bets are off. Like you don't like how the West is, how it doesn't matter. So I think that once we get past those two games, it becomes a complete wild card where we're playing teams that we haven't seen, and we're watching most of the other Eastern teams around us play other Eastern teams, and we have a decent sense of how those might shake out. And so that's where I totally agree that like we're gonna have a better sense of what to expect after these two games. And unfortunately, Birmingham is a midweek game. But I don't know. Josh, how are you feeling?
Putting this out, I think like if, let's say, I'd say if we beat Louisville, then yeah, draw against Birmingham is wonderful. I think, and like that's great. I think if we lose against Louisville, I think we kind of have to beat Birmingham. I think bottom line, we can't lose to Birmingham, and whether or not a draw or a win is good enough, I think kind of hinges on the Louisville game, at least in the short term. I think eventually there's possibilities we can catch up points on the back end of the Birmingham game, but I think we need to stay within 1 or 2 points of Birmingham after the Birmingham game, no matter what, and not lose to Birmingham. So we could lose to Louisville and fine, it's not ideal, but then it just kind of solidifies, okay, Birmingham kind of then becomes a must win for me. Yeah. So like I think if we put up a good fight against Louisville and we come out like a draw, okay. But then even at that, I think we need to beat Birmingham.
I mean, some good news about Birmingham is was it right after they play us? So before they play us, they play Indy, which I know Indy's not the greatest team in the world, but still, it's not like, New York Red Bulls or anything like that. And then after us, they play the Rowdies, which is going to be a hard team for them to play. And they also have to play San Antonio as well. So again, same thing as us. They're playing the top team in the West. So it's not like they have a cakewalk of a season ahead of them. But one thing to keep in mind with all of the West Coast teams is I just checked to make sure, but all of them have the uncongested season as well going into those games against us. So none of them have to play a Wednesday game and then turn around and play us. So they're going to be as rested as you can expect them to be when they have to travel, all the way to the East Coast to play us. I'm trying to find like positives and negatives, and there's a lot of both. I do think it all comes down to Birmingham. It's going to be the game that I'm the most, looking at as far as a bellwether of what to expect. Louisville, I feel like if we got a point out of Louisville, I'd be happy. Obviously, you always want your team to win, especially at home, but they're a great team, and just getting out of there with a point would be fantastic. Which is sad to say because they're coming to our house, and yeah, it is not fun to say that, but yeah, get a point against Louisville and then get the 3 against Birmingham, and that's what I feel like they need to do if we want to see a home playoff game. I don't know, just beating Birmingham, you're putting a lot of your eggs in the basket for the rest of the West Coast teams matches to get a home playoff game at that point. I do feel a little bit better about our chances with these West Coast teams because they have to travel for the most part, and the way they're distributed. I do feel like we should get some points out of these West Coast teams, But yeah, I would love to see at least fourth place, obviously. And to do that, I feel like, well, first off, you can't lose against Birmingham by more than 1 point, because if they end up in the same amount of points as us, it's the whole tie or head to head, who has the most points out of both. And at that point, we beat them 1-0 at their house. So if they beat us 2-0, that ends up being, favored for them, because then after you go head to head for points, it goes to goals scored. So we need to keep them down in goals, and we have to win that game, or at least draw that game.
Yeah, I would say here's my, I think, I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth and everyone's ears, but but I think I generally have the personality of being the more realistic, right, or pessimistic.
I was going to say pessimistic is probably I wouldn't say realistic, but go ahead. I feel like I've been pessimistic this one, but go ahead.
Yeah. I would say we have a better chance at beating Louisville than any other result. I think it's more likely that we'll beat Louisville than we'll draw with Louisville or lose to Louisville. And here's my thing.
Why? Okay, good.
Yeah. So they've been wonderful over the course of the season, right? But so they just have a huge stretch of away games, and that started with their first loss. So back in August 27th, they went away against Miami and lost. And then midweek they went away against Indy and lost. Then on that weekend they had Sacramento at home. They won. This week, in 2 days' time, they're traveling to Tulsa away, and then they play us on the weekend. So, they're going to have the midweek game. We won't. They've been pretty poor on the road. I mean, pretty poor. I'm putting right. I mean, they've been incredible, obviously. And, but for their standards, they lost 2 on the bounce away from home against, teams you would expect them to do pretty well against, and they have done well over the course of the season. And then they're going away midweek, and then they're coming away again on the weekend. So, look, I think all the Riverhounds players know. We know. Everyone knows. This Louisville game is huge. We all know the Birmingham game is maybe even arguably bigger, but Louisville is Louisville. It's home. We're getting close to the end of the season here. Louisville might have the slightest chink in their armor. They've shown no vulnerability all season, and just now there might be a little bit of a peaking kind of chink in their armor, and I think there could be something there to exploit. I don't know. I'm feeling, the more I'm talking through this, the more I feel better about the Louisville game.
All right. So, first of all, I agree with Liz. Emotionally, I am exhausted from this. Oh, I clicked on the wrong message here. She just said that this was stop. Liz keeps adding messages, and I keep trying to click on one, and then it just keeps going further and further down the list.
Not just gonna do it more.
Little plug that if you want to come and watch these live, you're welcome to come in and comment, and we can see the comments. We sometimes add them to the show. But Liz said, you guys have my emotions all over the place. Yeah, I feel like my emotions are all over the place as well. What was I going to say? I completely forgot. Liz completely threw me off track. Let's just call it. This weekend, Louisville, it's at home. Win, lose, draw. Josh, what are you taking?
Draw.
Kev?
I win.
You're going to say lose.
Look, I think here's the other thing, Mike, to give you some extra seconds to think about this. I think this is where I think up until this point in the season, we've had space to essentially hide of whatever's what is this team going to accomplish this season? I think up until this point, we've had room to essentially keep hiding and keep kicking that can down the road. This game on the weekend is the point now. There's no more kicking the can down the road. Whatever happens against Louisville and especially Birmingham will define how the season's going to end, in my opinion. And I think there's I don't know. I mean, on either side of the fence, I don't know the probabilities, but I'm feeling better about there's still a decent chance that the end of the season could be very good, and we could be going into the after season with a home playoff game with a good momentum behind our back. So, but I think this is no more kicking the can down the road. This is it.
I feel like you hosting the past 2 weeks has caused us to switch positions. I feel like I agree. We have to win this game. There are parallels to me in what's happening right now with not direct parallels, but it feels like parallels between what's happening with the Riverhounds and what is happening with Aston Villa. In that Aston Villa played City this past weekend and nobody gave them a shot because they thought they were on a downward trend. And somehow Aston Villa got a draw against City, and now it's
including
like,
you. I never.
Oh, no, absolutely, including me.
I never checked the Slack channel, and I checked the Slack channel randomly or something, and I saw Mike. You were just like crapping on Gerrard and Aston Villa. And
oh, don't get me wrong. I think I don't want to say he got lucky in this game, but I got to see more from Gerrard. But anyway, beyond that, now that they have tied City, there is this shift in the fan base. There is this confidence boost that, based on the previous 4 results alone, you have no right to have. But because you did it against the champs, you have this belief that you could do it against anybody. And so I see a similar parallel with the Hounds in that, yeah, we didn't really lose against the likes of Atlanta and New York and Loudoun, but it wasn't great. And so I think to get a result against Louisville at least gives me the confidence, and I think would give the guys the confidence of, okay, like, this wasn't just against these teams. We could show up against the best teams in the East. We can put on a performance, and then it's like ramping back up again. So I think that the game is vital. So I'm not going to say lose, even though I think realistically we could lose. I would say at least a draw against Louisville. And I think the fact, Kev, all of your points about playing away, I think having Tulsa midweek, they're going to have to be juggling players, whereas we get a full week's rest and really can lock in on it. The question is going to be, is Lilly going to try to stack the cards against Louisville, or is he going to be looking ahead to Birmingham? And that's what we don't know. So
there's no chance he's looking ahead to Birmingham.
There's no chance?
Saying it now.
You could argue that he is the reason that Josh is supposed to send the stupid shield to the Battery, because he couldn't figure out how to get 3 goals against the Battery because of rotation.
Fine. Louisville isn't Charleston.
That's funny. Yeah,
okay.
I don't think he's going to rotate either. I actually don't. I think he will play a full roster against Louisville, and I think he's going to see it not only because of the fact that he wants to get the points against Louisville, it's at home obviously, but also I think it's because this is a chance for them to kind of see how they stack up against Louisville and see what kind of pretty much how to play against a top tier team, which is what he needs to be doing if he wants to get far in the playoffs instead of crapping on the playoffs like he does every single season.
I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like one odd starter against Louisville.
Oi, Toby boy, here we go, Sims.
Yeah.
Coming in.
So here's the other thing. And we're going to save this conversation for another show because we're already over time here. But something you guys talked about last week that I was like, we should talk about it this week. We'll save it for another week. Is in talking with the Hounds president, something that sort of clicked for me was I was personally trying to think about what happens when we start selling out Hounds games on the regular, and you now have fans that can't get into the stadium, and so they're having to watch them on TV. Have we thought anything more about how do you draw in more fans when you can't actually get butts in the seats? And the takeaway that I had from there is they are very much focused on butts in the seats for now and the foreseeable future. And so I think that there is something about, and whether or not this translates to Bob or not, it feels like as an organization, they have identified the focus is we have to have positive experiences for people when they come to games. And so whether or not that translates into home performances should be prioritized over away performances, which they would never say. But I think from a purely sales and strategic standpoint, to have people coming to games and seeing a win is more likely to bring people back than to have people come to games and see a loss. And so therefore, there may be something else about this whole, like, please don't rotate for home games because we're trying to create an experience to get butts in seats because that's our primary focus. So we will save the rest of that conversation for some other time. I'm just sort of planting the seeds. Thank you, Liz, for saying that this is some tinfoil hat shit. Appreciate that.
I agree.
But I would not be surprised. So that's what we think. Let us know what you think. Guys, anything else for this episode that you guys want to talk about? I feel like we ran the game. I'm going to go cry and laugh at the same time because I don't know where I stand on the emotional spectrum at this point.
Louisville, the game is on Saturday, September 10th. We have I think it's throwback night, if I remember right. And it's also dollar beers as well for the hour before the game starts. So a lot of good reasons to come out. It's a huge game. Gonna be a lot of fun. Dollar beers are back for one day only. All the clamoring from the Steel Army and everyone else. Your prayers have been heard. Dollar beers are back. So come and take advantage. I can't wait.
Kev, anything from you?
I mean, it's impossible to predict this far out in the future, but right now, the weather in Pittsburgh on Saturday looks to be just sunny and partly cloudy with a high of 79. It looks perfect weather for a Louisville home game. So hopefully it stays that way.
It's going to rain now because of you. I'm just letting you know.
Sorry.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up. So remember, as I mentioned earlier, that you can be part of the conversation. Head over to twitter.com/Mongols. Click on the link that you'll see right there on the tweet that we have pinned to join our Twitter circle. $1 a month, you get loads of additional content from us and help to cover some of our expenses. $30 gets you a hat and in for the whole year. So check that out. Weekly reminder, Black Lives Matter. We are proudly part of the Beautiful Game Network, which is home to more than 100 volunteer writers and podcasters covering local soccer. Please help us keep doing what we're doing. Head over to bgn.fm, click the donate button, help us cover expenses, and thank you for your support. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon.
Cheers.
Later.
Oh, and go check out Houndsy. They just did an episode where they were in the car, and it was really cool. Now, bye.